Alright, now before I dig into the meat of this video, make sure you go down to the description box below and download that free PDF guide that I made to go right along with this video. It's also going to be a great resource for you in the future. In this video, I'm going to go over 7 main things. Number 1, nutrients. Then checking and maintaining your pH, adding hydrogen peroxide, how to siphon water, switching to flowering, using clay pebbles to prevent algae, and resetting your garden. So let's go ahead and just dive right into number 1, adding nutrients. When it comes to picking out your nutrients, you're going to be spoiled for choice. This video is for beginners, so I wanted to start you guys where I started, with General Hydroponics Flora series. Quick disclaimer, everything in this video I'm going to link up in the description box below so that you can easily find it, but this video is in no way, shape, or form a paid advertisement. This is all stuff that I use, and I just want to get that out of the way. I found the Flora series to be really easy to understand and use. Also, the variations were really fun for me as a beginner, and it all came down to that chart on the side of the bottle. You could just use that chart and you would be fine, but I actually went ahead and made a nutrient calendar to go alongside that chart, show you exactly what I did and still do in quite a few of my tower gardens. Also, if you want to know more about nutrients, be sure to check out this video. This is my Hydroponic Nutrients 101 course. So let's move on to number 2, checking and maintaining your pH. So pH is actually just a measurement of the relative amount of free hydrogens and hydroxyl ions in water. But we're going to go over that in a different course. So for today, I'm just going to refer to 2 much more popular terms: acidic and basic. The measurement goes from 0 or extremely acidic to 14 or very basic. And you're going to find a sweet spot right in the middle at 7.0. Now, a lot of gardeners will say you're going to be just fine setting your garden to 7.0, but there are some plants like blueberries and some more acidic plants that prefer something much lower, like a pH of 5.0. So I went ahead and included this chart in the PDF. It goes over every plant that I could possibly think of and their preferred pH so that you can see whether or not that can go in your garden. You can also come up with your garden's overall ratio just by using the general mathematics of add and divide. So measuring your pH. I've been down this road with all the different ways of measuring pH, and I would have to say I've had the most success with just the good old-fashioned analog pH strips. You can pick them up anywhere. A lot of them will go from 0 to 14, and you're looking for that sweet spot. So what if you don't want to calibrate your pH? Like, we already have a lot to think about. Is there a way to just set my pH to 7 and forget about it and not have to worry about checking or calibrating it? Yeah, there is. You could definitely use a pH calibration formula, which will set your garden to 7.0, but make sure you check the label because there's also one to calibrate it to 4.0, and that could be a fatal mistake for your plants. So when should you check your pH? Well, I check my pH once a week whenever I add my hydrogen peroxide, which just happens to be the next part. Adding H202 to your garden. Hydrogen peroxide works in your garden the same way it does as a topical solution on a wound. You know, the bubbles just go to work cleaning everything and also adding crucial oxygen to the roots of your plants. So H202 is an absolute must if you want to keep a clean garden. But there are a few things you definitely need to know when it comes to adding hydrogen peroxide to your garden, and here they are. Make sure you always get food grade H202. The stuff you get in the brown bottle has additives to sustain the shelf life, and you don't want that in your food. So food grade hydrogen peroxide, and it usually comes in 3 different concentrations: 3%, 12%, and 30%. If you get something over 3%, then you'll have to dilute it down to 3%, because all the ratios you're going to find, and the ratio that I include here, is based on 3% hydrogen peroxide. But fear not, I also include the dilution ratios to make things nice and easy for you if you did pick up the 12% or the 30% hydrogen peroxide. Alright, so part 4, how to siphon water. You might be saying, why do I need to know how to siphon water? And if you already do, then you can just skip this part. But I think it's a crucial skill to learn to move water from one place to the other. And the principles are very, very simple. Basically, the source has to be higher than the destination. Just put a tube in your garden. For example, if we're draining out the garden, put a tube in the garden and then the end of the tube in a bucket below where the garden is sitting. And then just start the flow by sucking the water through the tube. Try not to get any in your mouth. You'll start to kind of feel the pressure, and as it gets closer, you can pull it out of your mouth and put it into the bucket. By sucking the water through, you create a vacuum, so the water behind in your reservoir is being pulled through the tube, and then gravity is just doing the rest. It's a pretty cool thing, and siphoning water is a really great way to move water to or from your garden. Number 5, switching to flowering. So you're going to notice two things when it's time to switch to flowering. The first thing you're going to start to notice is we're going to go from that aggressive leafy growth stage where things are just kind of going crazy, and that's going to stop all of a sudden. And the growth is going to be slowed down quite a bit, and then you're going to notice these little buds coming up out of the ends of the plants, and those buds are going to become your flowers. And flowering is the indication that fruit is about to come. Fruit being any plant that has its own seed inside of something you eat. It can be a little bit tricky sometimes because some plants are going to be ready and flowering before other plants, but if you go back to that nutrient calendar that I made, then you shouldn't have a problem. A lot of times when you switch the nutrients, it triggers those other plants to get a move on, and they catch right up. Number 6, using clay pebbles to prevent algae. The way I do this, well, first let me talk about algae. So I was installing a custom hydroponic garden in a fifth wheel trailer a few weeks ago, and the customer said to me, man, wouldn't it be really cool if we could use clear tubes so you could see the water flowing and the plants growing? And I sighed and said, yes, it would be really cool to do clear tubes, but algae. The reason you couldn't do anything clear is because if the water is in contact with light, then algae will grow. It's that plain and simple. If a constantly wet surface of your garden is introduced to any light, then algae will start to develop. If it develops on your roots, it suffocates your roots. They no longer are taking in nutrients or oxygen, and your plant will die. One thing I noticed is that the top of the rock wool is a perfectly constant moist surface, especially if you're starting your seeds in your rock wool, for algae to grow. So once the plant is sprouted and ready to go in the garden, I tuck it down deep into the net pot, and then I'll put a few hydroponic clay pebbles around the plant to protect the top of the rock wool from light. It's that simple. They're basically just creating shade. Never spray the plants, never water your plants from the top. There's no need to do that. They're getting all the water that they need from the garden itself. If you water the plants from the top, then that's likely going to introduce algae to parts of the plant, or the clay pebbles then on top of the rock wool. All right, finally, number 7, resetting your garden. I only clean out my garden whenever I'm doing a full reset. And the reason you would do a full reset is because there's only a certain amount of space in your garden for the roots to grow. Roots are very, very strong. One of two things would happen if you allow your roots to continue to grow without resetting your garden. First, they would just stop growing, and then your plant would stop growing, and it wouldn't fruit anymore. It would just be a plant with no fruit. Number 2, it would keep growing, and it would bust your garden apart at the seams. I don't know if you've ever been walking on like a sidewalk and you've seen a tree just taking over the sidewalk in this gnarled power struggle that the sidewalk is clearly lost. I mean, roots are very, very strong. So once your garden has reached its maximum, it's time to go ahead and pull the plants out and clean out the garden. That being said, I never take my garden completely apart unless something catastrophic happens. So here's how I clean it without completely disassembling the entire garden. So step 1, remove the old plants. This is probably going to be easier said than done. They're really going to be in there. Their roots are going to be tied up with other roots, and it's just going to be an insane hodgepodge of roots inside of there. So remove what you can with your hand just by pulling it out through the top. Then number 2, clean out around the holes wherever you can. Reach your hand in there, pull the roots out that you can get out just around every individual hole. So number 3, we're going to flush out all the roots by pouring water into the garden. So then your reservoir should be filled with a bunch of root debris. Number 4, replace your net cups or cloning cups. Number 5, now you're going to siphon the water out of the tank. I recommend using a larger diameter hose for this because we're trying to suck through all the old roots and all the debris as well. You might have to do this a couple times to get all the debris out. So don't be afraid to refill your garden, siphon, refill your garden, siphon until there's no more debris in the bucket. Step 6, add 4 times the normal amount of hydrogen peroxide to the tank, as well as enough water to the reservoir to completely cover the pump up. So we can run the garden now for 15 minutes. Allow that hydrogen peroxide to really clean the inside of the garden out. Okay, so run the pump for 15 minutes was actually number 7. Number 8, siphon out that mixture now. Siphon out the 4 times hydrogen peroxide setup, which would be 12%. So you can just put 12% solution right in there if that's what you have. Number 9 is refill the nutrients and hydrogen peroxide for the next plants. Now the last thing, when you remove your precious plants that have been growing in your garden for so long and have given you so much delicious fruit and love and joy in your home, don't fear. You can replant those into another hydroponic garden. They're likely not going to thrive in a soil garden because, frankly, they've been living the good life in hydroponics, and to put them in soil, then they'd be like, what is going on here? You can, however, move them to another hydroponic garden. This channel, Humble Growth, is full of videos about different types of hydroponic gardens, what plants grow best, and so is my weekly newsletter. So make sure you check out humblegrowthhydroponics.com, which is also linked in the description box below. I really hope this helped you guys. I didn't touch on a lot of minutia and these smaller details because I feel like it can be a bit overwhelming, but this is information that I know will get you growing and keep you growing. So let's grow together.